What is going on, Bucs fans and CFP fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with another video talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And today we're going to be going over the players to watch for the Bucs Week 2 matchup against the Houston Texans on primetime Monday Night Football. The Bucs are going to be in Houston. So the game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which is nice because especially for us doing the post-game show, that is very nice. But I mentioned we, and I am not alone. Joining me is my CFP co-host, Mr. Rhett Matthew. Rhett, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Prime time though. I got to tell you, a lot of cause for concern here. I do think the Bucs can show up, play well enough to win, but I don't get superstitious about a lot of things. But sports are really kind of the only thing I do kind of get a little stitious about, and this could be one of those instances. But I'm looking forward to a good game. Bucs on prime time, under the lights for the first time this season, and as you mentioned, we got the early window, which means we get to go to bed early.
That's right. Yeah, always much better. So hopefully the Bucks can snap their little skid here they've had on prime time. But with that being said, let's get right into it. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to start with Mike Evans. And this isn't really necessarily to say that Mike Evans needs to step up or this and that, but this game does have some meaning for Mike Evans, and he even spoke about that earlier this week, talking about how, this is probably going to be the last time that he is going to be in Houston. He's going to play a football game in Houston. So I do think there is some significance there, and he hasn't found the end zone yet. So potentially he could find the end zone in this one. What do you think about the Mike Evans matchup against the Texans?
I think Mike Evans, like you said, it's not that he needs to step up because even last week when the Falcons were paying extra close attention to him, he still found a way to lead the team in catches. Mike's going to get his. But I do think it's interesting, as you mentioned, this could be the last time he does play in Houston as a player in the NFL. I don't think the Bucs would play Houston again for another 3 or 4 years at least. And even then, in that instance, I think the next matchup is going to be in Tampa Bay. So, I mean, on top of that, the Texans do have some pretty good talent, I think, in that secondary. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a guy who's given the Bucs problems before. I think Derek Stingley Jr. is kind of underrated in the grand scheme of NFL corners. He could be a guy that, could give Mike Evans a problem or two if they find a matchup there. But I'm looking forward to Mike doing what he always does, and that's showing up for the Bucs on prime time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, he's done it before, right? I mean, he's done it time and time again. Hopefully this time he can find a way to make an impact. Not that he didn't last week. He did make an impact. Impact actually in more ways than one on the box score. When you look at the film, a lot of times the Falcons were keying in on him. And trust me, I'm sure the Texans will as well. But I think the Bucs are also going to want to get him the football in this one. But in order to get him the football, Rhett, Baker Mayfield's going to need some time, right, in the pocket. And that brings us to our next guy to watch here. That is going to be left tackle. Did I say that right? Left tackle Graham Barton.
Still,
It could, yeah, it could potentially be. Now Tristan Wirfs did return to practice. We'll see. As of the recording of this video, it's not like 100% that he's not going to play, but most likely he will not be playing. So it will be Graham Barton yet again lining up at left tackle to start against the Houston Texans. And look, the Atlanta Falcons, like, they tried to go out and improve their pass rush, right? And like the offensive line did decent against the Falcons. But the Texans have arguably the best pass rush duo in the NFL in Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. Both guys, they combined for 23 sacks last season. That's going to be a test. Regardless of who Graham Barton is playing against, it's going to be a much bigger test than it was week one. And I'm kind of glad that they were able to have a week to be able to adjust to that, basically, right? Adjust to playing left tackle because this is going to be a pretty tough matchup for Graham Barton here.
yeah, and honestly, this Texans defense early on, I know it's only been a week, but they were one of the more physical defenses across the NFL last weekend in week one. I know they lost to the Rams, disappointing 14-9, but they did a good job at containing a lot of the firepower those guys have. And, Matt Stafford, the ghost of Matt Stafford, if you will, they weren't as easygoing as they normally seem like they were on the offensive side of the ball. And we mentioned personnel. I'll do it again here. You talked about the pass rush, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. Regardless of who is going to be matching up against Barton more often, he's going to have his hands full. And on top of that, there's still some question marks on the offensive line. We'll see who's truly available by the time this game kicks off Monday night. But if the Bucs cannot keep that pass rush away from Baker Mayfield, it could be a very long night.
Yeah, no, it definitely could be. That's going to be Arguably the biggest key to the entire game, I think. Honestly, I think keeping Baker Mayfield upright, and giving him time in the pocket to operate, I think is going to be massive. And I think Graham Barton, assuming he's at left tackle, is going to play a huge part in that. So let's transition over to the defensive side of the ball. We just talked about the Texans pass rush and against the Buccaneers offensive line. I want to highlight the Bucks pass rush, not necessarily look at one particular player. Or I'm sort of looking at everybody, right? Hassan Reddick, Yaya Diaby, Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea, even rotational guys like a Logan Hall, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell, those types of guys. I'm looking at those because the biggest issue with the Texans last season was their offensive line. The biggest issue, or I should say, one of the bigger issues with the Texans so far, now granted, we have had one football game, so it is a small sample size, but it doesn't seem like the Texans' offensive line has gotten much better over the offseason. As a matter of fact, in the offseason, they traded away Laramie Tunsil, which he was starting to get to like where the contract didn't really meet the production, but still was probably their best offensive lineman, and they ended up moving him. So this is a Texans offensive line that simply isn't that great, and it's one that you would like to see the Bucks kind of revamped pass rush take advantage of here. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on really all four of the Bucks starters there along the defensive line, four or five, however you want to look at it, and hopefully they can generate consistent pressure and get to the quarterback more than just the one time that they ended up doing on Sunday against the Falcons.
Yeah, and I thought even now that we've had a little bit of time to go back and watch a lot of that Falcons tape again, guys like Hassan Reddick, guys like Yaya Diaby, I'm excited to see them continue to keep that momentum because I thought they were solid week one. I want to hone in a little bit on Kalijah Kancey. I have puffed that guy up a ton on this show, and I'm not shying away from it now. Kalijah Kancey's still my guy. He's still a dog. I want to see him show up. He had a couple of double team reps week one that he looked good going up against Atlanta, but as you had mentioned, this is still a concerning offensive line for Houston, and it's absolutely an offensive line this Buccaneers pass rush can take advantage of. So Vita Vea is going to do his job. He's going to open up opportunities for some of the other guys along that defensive line. We know that they've got the one-on-one pass rush skills, but I'm going to be watching Kalijah Kancey. I just want to see him impact the game a little bit more, like the way that we know he can, like the guy who has led the team in sacks.
Speaking of impacting the game, we're going to be taking a look at a guy who, no, to be fair, it wasn't all bad on Sunday, but he had allowed some splash plays, and that is linebacker Cervasier Dennis. Just looking for him to bounce back, really. And I do believe, he's going to have an easier matchup, right? Whenever he's out of the backfield, it's going to be mostly, a guy like Nick Chubb, who is good football player, but like he's not Bijan Robinson, and that's a much easier matchup for a guy like Cervasier Dennis. So I am a little bit more hopeful in that, but just hopefully in pass coverage in general he can improve a little bit more, and hopefully week one was just kind of a getting your feet wet kind of, and hasn't played football in a long time. He had that injury, missed most of the 2024 season, so hopefully that's just him sort of getting into a rhythm and getting into the system, and hopefully he can bounce back with a solid performance on Monday.
Yeah, I've brought it up time and time again by this point, but I thought that after he was benched in week one, he came back into the game. His first rep on the field, he blew up the running back behind the line of scrimmage. That's the stuff I like to see, and that's where the playmaking ability of Cervasier Dennis is on display. Now, he's got to fix those coverage chops, right? I mean, just too many times he was left on an island or out of position, just not able to simply cover enough ground to kind of play that cover defense sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to watch, but I still think that with the sample size continuing to grow, we're going to see more highlights than lowlights for Cervasier Dennis throughout the rest of the year. I think the Bucs had a lot of faith in this guy coming into the season, and I think they had a lot of faith in him for good reason. So I expect him to turn it around. Hopefully it starts this week in Houston. Put some good tape out there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, each week is a new opportunity. So it is definitely a big opportunity for Cervasier Dennis. So we'll wait and see what happens. Let us know who you're keeping a close eye on in this matchup. Was it offense, defense? Is it anybody that we listed? Is it anybody that we didn't list? We're always curious to hear your guys' comments. But thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And go Bucks.